Hey everybody, my name is Brian Rose. I serve as the Associate Director for Career Education here in the VCU School of Business Career Services office. Thanks for hitting play on this recording. Today what we're going to be talking about is making conversation with the focus of kind of tactics and skills to improve your networking capabilities. But at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is how to make conversation with people and how to reframe the way you look at networking a little bit in order to focus on just day-to-day conversations and how to have conversations in professional networking settings. So we'll be talking about those tactics and skills. So hopefully it's fairly helpful as you kind of think about networking day-to-day and networking at actual professional events. All right. So we kind of start off with networking is important, right? That's the core of understanding, why we're talking about this today. So what we need to do is we need to start with the same definition and understanding of networking, right? And so the main definition of networking here is that networking is the act or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts, right? What's important to realize that in this definition, it does not say networking is professional events, right? Or networking is a professional event. Networking is a career fair. Networking is reaching out to people on LinkedIn to facilitate conversation, right? That is not what that definition says, but oftentimes we think about networking as this extra thing we have to do, or we have to go to this event, or we have to network on LinkedIn. Now, those are great tactics. Those are things that we want to do, but at the end of the day, the way we define networking is that it is the act or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. So when you think about it, every single person around you is a potential professional or social contact, right? The person that sits next in class to you, or the person who's on Zoom class with you, right? The faculty member that you have, the staff member you engage with, all of these people are potential professional contacts if you take advantage of it, right? If you see networking as a development of social contacts, if you see it as a day-to-day conversation and relationship development tool, right, then you're networking all the time. And we need to look at networking in this way because you never know how relationships are going to help you, right? How acquaintances, friendships, all that good stuff is going to help you, right? My second job in student affairs in higher ed, I essentially got the interview, obviously because of good experience, but also matching that good experience with having someone who was simply an acquaintance, right? We didn't even know each other that well, but she knew good things of me, and we had good conversations in the past. She sent an email to her supervisor and said, hey, you need to interview Brian Rose, right? And if I hadn't created that relationship, and if I'm not intentional with engaging with people day to day, then that email doesn't happen. I might not have even gotten interviewed for that position. So it's important to realize that you are around potential social and career and professional contacts every single day if you take advantage of it. You never know where someone in your class or something like that is going with their life. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 2 years down the line, that person that you actually spoke with in class, instead of just putting your head down and not engaging with them, they could be an acquaintance or a friend that helps you out in the near future. So I spend a good amount of time on this definition because I really think it's extremely important that we reframe our understanding of networking and how we approach it as career people. I'll get off my soapbox for a second and kind of move on to how important is it. Nearly 80% of professionals consider networking to be important to career success via a LinkedIn survey. Is it really that important? Well, yes. Why is that? Because the Washington Post in 2016, a few years ago, came out with the fact that 70% of all jobs are filled through referrals or internal searches, right? So what does that mean? What that means is referrals. What is a referral? A referral is when someone who you already are an acquaintance of or a friend of, speaks well on your behalf to a hiring manager or submits your resume to HR for a position that's already open, and you essentially get a leg up on the competition because someone has spoken well on your behalf, and you'll likely get an interview because of it, right? Referrals happen all the time because it really helps to, as a hiring manager, to have someone you trust speak well on somebody, right? Referrals really help. Also, internal searches, right? The numbers are varied, but only about 40% of all the jobs that exist in companies are actually posted. About 60% of jobs that exist that are there to be had are never even posted. They're just posted internally. That doesn't mean that they're solely hired internally. That just means that they're never posted to external job boards. So what does that mean? All the people that work at that company then have access to apply that job, but also they're referring their friends, right? They're submitting their friends. They're telling their friends about this opportunity and saying, hey, here's how you can apply to this job, right? So again, networking is extremely, extremely important because of these numbers and this data, right? And we cannot just look at networking as, oh, I'm going to talk to these 5 people, these 10 people, I'm going to go to this event and that event. Yes, that's really important, but this day-to-day conversation facilitation and relationship development is extremely, extremely important in your career. So networking is hard for most, right? Even though it is important, it is hard for most, right? Another survey revealed that up to 85% of all jobs are filled using networking skills. So even though networking is important, it is hard, and because it is hard, and people are sometimes a little scared of it, 41% of professionals would like to network more often, but they don't have enough time. And I say this again to continue my soapbox, is the idea that not having enough time for networking is something that does not really make sense. Because networking is not just events, right? It is day to day. It's working on a team in an office, performing well, and then working next to another team and making sure that when you have conversations with those other team members that you don't work with all the time, you're actually taking advantage of those day-to-day conversations, running into the break room, right? Walking in the hallway together, right? You're developing relationships with people all the time. Because who knows? That team that works next to you, they might have an opening in 6 months, and you like what that team does. And now because you've had some good conversations with some of those team members, they're going to go to their manager and say, hey, Brian's applying to this open position on our team. You know, we don't know a ton about him, and it seems like he does a really good job, but, you know, we really like what he brings to the table, and he's had some really good interactions with us and has asked us about what we do and has always seemed interested in our work. So let's definitely, you know, at least talk to him and see what he has to say in an interview, right? So it's important to understand that day-to-day networking is almost even more important than event-based networking. And it is not something that takes a lot of time. Or we don't network at all, right? 1 in 4 young professionals currently do not network at all, and we need to make sure that we are not one of those 1 in 4, right? So again, networking is hard for most, right? So let's talk about that. Who finds conversations with new people challenging? You know, why is that? Think about that. Who finds conversations with new people challenging? And why? So we're not in class together, right? We're not able to talk about this, but when these questions come up, I just want you to be thinking about them, you know, in your head. And I think a lot of times people who find conversations with new people challenging, I think it starts with the idea that, like, hey, I work part-time. I work full-time while I'm in school. Or I'm really busy. I'm in clubs or organizations. And the thought that I have to, like, treat every class period as this time to network and create relationships with all these people, like, that's exhausting, right? I think sometimes people treat it that way and think about it that way, which makes a lot of sense, right? The next thing is, what is specifically scary about networking? Think about that for a second. What might scare you about the idea of networking? I think a lot of times for this one, you know, networking is a little scary for people, you know, mainly because they say, you know, I don't really know what to say. You know, what do I say to somebody, right? How do I push this conversation forward? And this is sort of a rhetorical question of, what if we just thought about it as getting to know somebody new and or better? Does that help, right? What if we just thought about it as getting to know somebody and them getting to know us? right? And not just put this huge networking, aura around it. But this is just getting to know someone better and them getting to know us. And I think that's an important way to think about it. So, for example, you're in a class, whether it's physically in a class or you're in a Zoom-based class where you're just online with somebody, and they share some interesting stuff, and they've maybe mentioned they're an American Marketing Association. What if you sent them an email and said, hey, Brian, I've heard you share in class. I know we've talked a little bit back and forth in class, and I know you mentioned you were an American Marketing Association. I've been thinking about joining that club. Can you tell me more about your experience in that club and, advice you would have for someone trying to join it, right? Reach out to somebody, create that connection, even though it's virtual, like you've heard someone talk, maybe it's been interesting, and maybe you open with a question, right? So instead of just kind of, being afraid to do those types of things or being hesitant to create those relationships and to ask those types of questions, like get out there, do it. So a quote here I thought was really interesting. Introverts avoid small talk because we know it is the white bread of conversation. There are no real nutrients. It's just empty calories, right? So I am not an introvert, but this really resonated with me. I think a lot of people don't engage with the idea and understand or appreciate the idea of day-to-day networking and day-to-day relationship development because small talk to them is just like this, it's boring thing that's like, hey, how's the weather? Hey, Jerry, how are the kids? It's like to a lot of people, they're like, it's this kind of monotonous thing that, we're not talking about anything real. But the thing is like you are in charge of that conversation. You are an active contributor to that conversation. So we're going to talk about tactics in order to have more enjoyable, more in-depth conversations with people, both day-to-day and in networking settings. But again, these conversations mean something. They're not empty, because they can really help you in your career as a person. So we've kind of done, 12 minutes or so of exposition here of kind of building up to what we're talking about. What is the formula, right? What is the formula to have good conversations and to network well, right? Here's the big secret. You'll hear so many people talk about networking. You'll read these articles and you'll do all this stuff and you'll hear about say this, say that, say this, say that. Well, the big secret about networking is the best networkers aren't the people with the most to say. They are the best listeners. They are the best at asking good questions. They are the best at adapting to and understanding their environment, right? The big secret to networking, day to day or in person, or virtual event-based networking, is the best networkers aren't the people with the most to say. They're the best listeners. They're the people who are the best at asking questions, right? When you think about people you meet, right, typically your best impression of somebody is somebody who has asked you a good question, right? Whether you meet them, serendipitously and at some random, walking through the hallway, or you've met them in class or whatever, they're not the people that just chat and chat and chat and chat and chat right when you meet them. They're the people that ask you a good question. Hey, how'd you decide to come to VCU? How'd you decide to major in accounting? Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that, which we'll get to some of those tactics in a second. But the people that you typically leave conversations with, whether meeting them new or talking to them a little bit further for the first time, you're left with the most positive opinions and thoughts about somebody are typically because of the questions they ask, the way that they engage with you, not just what they said, right? That's the big secret to networking. So when we're about to talk about some networking tactics, and they're all focused on listening and asking good questions. So how do we do all these things? So it starts with the idea of active listening, right? Again, for most people that say they're scared of networking or really don't know what to do, it's because I don't know what to say. What do I say? What do I say? What do I say? What do I say? Well, what I always start with is, first we need to listen. We need to be present. We need to try and be as least stressed out as possible and just be present and just focus on listening to what the person is sharing and concentrate on what and how they are sharing it. So active listening is fully concentrating on what and how something is being said instead of just hearing to respond. You're listening to the words they're saying, right? You're listening to the passion behind it, right? The fear behind it, the sadness behind it, right? Whatever emotions are behind it. You're paying attention to the words and the feelings, right? To get an idea of what they're saying and what we want to say in response and the questions we want to ask, right? Active listening is one of the most important and developed skills that anyone can have. And the reason that is because it's focused on what you feel that person needs you to respond with. It's not just focused on what should I say, what should I say, what should I say. It's focused on what you get from what someone said, right? This is what I make sense of what you said, and this is the question I'm going to ask, or this is the statement I'm going to make back to you because of what you said and the feelings you brought to the table when you said it, right? And it's kind of just a little small change in the way that you interact with people. So we'll dive into the more complexities of this here with the basic listening sequence. So by using a set of techniques called the basic listening sequence, designed by counselors, therapists, psychologists, and others in professional helping roles, anyone can tap into strong conversational techniques. Again, the best networkers are the people with the best questions, not with the most to say. So this basic listening sequence is extremely helpful, right, if you really take these tactics to heart and utilize them day to day and in networking situations. And again, let someone else do most of the talking. So here's the basic listening sequence. Really, it's more tactics than a sequence, right? So this isn't, left to right, 1 to 5. You're going to use these whenever, you feel is appropriate. So again, they're more tactics than a sequence necessarily, but we're going to go over, all of these now. So the first here, as you can see, is questioning, right? Using pointed, specific, open, and closed-ended questions to gain more information. An open-ended question would lead to a more descriptive and fuller answer, and a closed-ended question would lead to a yes or no answer, right? So you're talking to someone. Let's say, for example, I'm talking to a student. I run into them in the hallway, and they're telling me about their internship. And they're telling me a little bit about it. And so, essentially I say, hey, that sounds really interesting. Can you tell me more about that project you just, brought up? I think you mentioned something about implementing an information system. Tell me more about that. So I'm asking an open-ended question to keep them talking, right? Instead of me sharing information about myself or me kind of taking over the conversation, I'm actively listening to what they have to say, pointing out something that is interesting to me about it, and asking an open-ended question that gets them talking more, right? It keeps them talking. The next here is encouraging. So small ways to encourage the other person to talk more. This can include nonverbal skills like head nods or smiling, but also small words like, yeah, I get that, I see, interesting, right? Things that prompt them to share more, right? Also try repeating the last few words the person said and say it back to them, right? So the first part here with the nonverbal piece, nonverbal communication is so important. It represents how engaged you are in the conversation, how interested you are in the conversation. So a smile or a small grin or something like that, nodding your head, all that sorts of stuff makes it seem like you're way more engaged in the conversation. Eye contact, all of that, right? You can also use those small words like, yeah, interesting, awesome, wonderful, right? As someone's talking, to keep them talking and to show that you really are interested in what they had to say. And kind of here at the end of encouraging, this is something before I even learned about this sequence that I do all the time. So also try repeating the last few words the person said back to them. So again, I'm talking to the student and they end the sentence with, and it was a really fun experience. Oh, it was a fun experience? Tell me more about that, right? So I'm taking literally the words that they just said and pushing them forward to, tell me more about why it was fun, right? And then you have paraphrasing here. Repeating back what you've heard from the other person, mirroring the meaning, but putting it into your own words. So that person is telling me all about this student who's in an internship is telling me all about their experience and their challenges and their excitements and all that sorts of stuff. And so I'm going to say, hey, that's really interesting. I know that internships can be a lot of things to a lot of people. Some of them are really well organized. Some of them, maybe you're sort of figuring your way as you go. And, I love to hear the idea that you've really pushed through a lot of challenges and, have enjoyed it a lot as well. I find that to be really, really exciting, and I'm really proud of you for that, right? So I'm taking what they've said and the feeling behind what they've said, repeating it back to them and hopefully encouraging them to share more. So reflecting is similar to paraphrasing, right? But it focuses on the feelings or emotions, right? What I did with paraphrasing just then is I talked about a little bit about the tactics and a little about what they shared information-wise, but reflecting is sort of paraphrasing, focusing on the emotion piece, right? You can also focus on what they're doing non-verbally. So, for example, I'm talking to the student, and they seem like really trepidatious or really hesitant about sharing stuff, which happens all the time, right? I might have worked with them for a long time to help them get this opportunity, and they then feel bad about possibly telling me that it isn't really all that it's cracked up to be. So I'll notice that, and I'll point it out, and I'll say something like, hey, I can kind of see you seem a little bit uncomfortable about, sharing about your experiences. Is everything okay? I'm kind of hearing and seeing that, it might be a bit more challenging than you were expecting. Can you tell me, or are you comfortable with talking about that? Right? I'm making sure, again, this is active listening, right? I'm not just talking to someone, trying to think about what do I say? I'm paying attention to them and where they're coming from and what they're bringing to the conversation in order to strategically respond with the things that I feel like they need from the conversation, right? And then from there, summarizing, I think, is an extremely, extremely helpful tool. If you get nothing else from this listening sequence, I think summarizing is extremely helpful. I don't think that people realize and understand how to end a conversation. When you maybe run into people in the hallway, or, you're on the phone with somebody, or, you're at a networking event, like, how do I actually say goodbye, right? But summarizing can be a great way to end a conversation or politely back out of a less than productive conversation. You pull together one or two brief details about what you talked about before, going in for a handshake and a departure. So essentially, you're going to say, hey, I really enjoyed hearing about, everything that you mentioned about the internship. Really awesome that it's been a good experience. I know there's been some challenges, but overall, I know you did a lot of work to get to this point. So I have to run up to a presentation here really quick, but, it was really good seeing you, and congratulations again, right? I shake their hand, we depart. So I have to go. I have to get out of this conversation. I have to wrap it up, but I don't just say, hey, I have to run this presentation, bye. I genuinely wrap up, one or 2 points of the conversation and say thank you and end the conversation, and we go on about our day. So I share all of that to essentially say, if you really, really take this to heart, if you understand this listening sequence, if you understand these tactics and actually utilize them day to day and actually utilize them in networking settings, you're going to be better for it, right? Because people are going to ask you about yourself. Of course, they're going to share information about yourself, achievements that you've had, things that you like to do, what you want for your career. All of those things you are going to share, right? That's just a fact. You're going to share those things, right? But for the most part, when you're driving conversation, when you're networking with people, when you're talking to people day to day, one of the best things that you could do is take time to get to know them, ask them questions, encourage them, paraphrase what they're saying, reflect and notice emotions and nonverbals that you're sharing, and ask about those, right? Actually say goodbye in a positive way when summarizing. So you do all of these things, you're going to have productive conversations with people, and they're going to leave thinking well of you no matter the setting. So we're going to actually fly through these in class. I would wait for your response, but we'll fly through these real quick. So name that listening skill now that you've learned about them. The new connection says, oh yeah, I've been working at the Martin Agency for about 2 years now. You say, really? That's interesting. What would you say you like best about it, right? What is that? It is questioning. So we are just directly taking something they said and asking a question about it. New connection. BDO is a really great place to work. There's always something new going on, and you get to deal with all sorts of different clients. Right? Wow, that's great. Variety in work is so important. I'm glad you enjoy it. What is that? And that is paraphrasing, right? You're taking kind of the topic that they're talking about, variety and whatever, and paraphrasing it into your own words. And likely after you say, I'm glad you enjoy it, they're going to keep going and say, oh yeah, I have enjoyed it, and this is why, blah, 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 right? New connection. That's nothing compared to the place I worked up in D.C. That was seriously the hardest job I've ever had. The hardest job you've ever had? Yeah, it was really rough. This one time, my boss, ... Right? What is that? That's going to be encouraging. As we talked about, encouraging is the nonverbals that you're sharing with someone that, yes, interesting, wow, as someone is talking to encourage them to talk more. And it's also essentially repeating the last few words back to them in question format typically, and it keeps them talking. The next here is, so yeah, that's pretty much my experience in a nutshell. You say, absolutely. Well, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for telling me what you do over at Westrock. Do you have a business card? So here, you're in a professional networking setting, and you're making sure that you let them know that you thank them for their time, and you make sure you get their business card. And now you shake their hand and say goodbye, right? And I forgot to say, that's summarizing. That one is summarizing. That one's pretty straightforward. The last thing here is the new connection. Having my externship at CoStar was a really cool experience. You say, that's so awesome. I can see your excitement watching you talk about it, right? So again, you're actively listening. You're hearing and seeing their emotion and not just what they're saying, right? You're recognizing that, like, hey, I can see you're really, really excited about this, right? And that means a lot to them, whether they know it or not. You recognizing their level of excitement and emotion behind what they're talking about. So I know we're not physically in class or anything like that, and we're not in person, but try it out. Next time you're talking to a classmate, next time you're talking to a faculty member, next time you're talking to someone at the grocery store, next time you're talking to a family member, whatever it is, right? Have a conversation. But say it's a classmate, right? Ask how they decided to study business at VCU and see where the conversation goes there. Utilize the BLS tactics, right? Questioning, encouraging, paraphrasing, reflecting, and summarizing, right? Try these out with anyone that you come across, and if it's a classmate, start off by just asking how they decided to study business at VCU and go from there. So then from there, you have conversations with people, you go to networking events. Reflection is always good. What was challenging? What came easily? What tactic could you use more of? I forgot to summarize and actually say goodbye, right? What can you do differently going forward? Where could you practice these skills, right? So we're going to go over essentially 2 more slides, and then we're wrapped up here for this presentation. But one thing I want to leave you with here, we talked about the big secret being, hey, the best networkers are the people with the best questions, not with the most to say. But the secret phrase here that you heard me say on accident, I tried not to do it, but I do it all the time. On accident earlier, the secret phrase is, tell me more. Tell me more. That's interesting. Tell me more about it. I like that. Tell me more about blank. That's so awesome. Tell me more about blank. Sounds challenging. Tell me more about blank. Right? Anytime that you're using these tactics, a lot of the times you can use the phrase tell me more to get someone to keep talking and keep sharing. That's a really great way to utilize any one of these tactics, and I do it all the time. So again, tell me more is an extremely awesome phrase to get people continue to talk. So don't forget it. So we're going to end, kind of wrap up this presentations with some don'ts. I don't like that it's kind of ending not on a negative note, but hey, don't do these things. I would be remiss if in a making conversation or networking presentation I did not mention a few of these things. So I think these are helpful. So, if you could, bear with me as I go through these things. I think they're really, really helpful. But again, I think it's important to mention these things in a presentation like this. So in professional or networking settings, a lot of times, I'm bringing these up because a lot of times people are like, what do I not say? What do I need to avoid? Right? One of the first ones is don't complain about other people or projects, even if other people do. Right? Talking about challenges versus complaining and gossiping are two totally different things, right? Even if someone else is gossiping or complaining, you don't need to be doing that. So whether this is at a career fair or a professional networking event, or whether it's in the office, complaining and gossiping is not something that is going to have long-term gain, right? It is not going to have long-term gain. It might have short-term gain. You might feel better in the moment and all that sort of stuff, but the more and more you do that, the more and more that you're a complainer and you're a gossiper, right? And especially in a networking setting that people don't really know you, right? You don't want to come across with any sort of, complaining or gossiping or anything like that when you're talking about anything you've been involved in, right? We want to be positive. The next thing here is do not talk about a wild night out, right? Not professional, not cool, right? So, for example, a lot of you who are listening to this presentation, you're young. You're likely, graduating college. And if you're not age young, you're young at heart. Who knows, right? But a lot of times in the professional setting, you're going to create good friends. You just are. And you're going to have some fun together, and you might go out together or whatever, but you don't come into the office the next day like being super loud about, the Thursday, bar night that you just had and something like that. I mean, it's something, again, that might seem like it's short-term enjoyable, or that conversation might be short-term fun to laugh about and stuff like that. At the end of the day, the real kind of people with power typically in that office, or supervisors, or people with a bit more tenure than you, are not going to particularly think that that's the most professional thing. So make sure you don't, do that. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to have fun with your coworkers. It's okay to, enjoy that time professionally, but, keep that outside of the office. This is one thing I think is really important. Do not swear or curse, right? Even if the other person does, you don't know who's listening. So there's a lot of times in office settings that, cursing or swearing is something that is sort of, a part of the office culture. It's just what people do. But again, you don't have to do that, right? You don't have to do that to create good relationships with people, and you don't have to do that. So it's important, again, long-term gain versus short-term gain, right? Stay away from that. Don't drink too much. For most people, 2 drinks, close the check. Especially, we're not talking about, like we talked about, spending time with friends, right, from the office who are, 6 months, a year, you've developed, really strong, trusting relationships. We're talking about, happy hours that the office or the company is, maybe picking up the bill. We're not ordering, a lot of drinks. We're ordering probably 2, closing the check, getting out of there, right? So in professional networking settings, whether it's conferences, whether it's, happy hours that the office or the company is fronting, or the Christmas party, whatever, we want to make sure that we're, being professional with the way that we're handling that scenario, right? Other questions that people typically have is do not order the most expensive thing on the menu. Follow the lead of the highest ranking person. So if you're at an interview and a meal is part of it, or again, you're at a happy hour and the office or company is picking up the bill for appetizers and things, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to following the lead of the highest ranking person there to make sure that we understand the etiquette of what's going on around us. So make sure you're following the kind of host or the highest ranking person there, their lead, and making sure that you're making good decisions around whether it's expensive things on the menu, how many appetizers, things like that. The last thing here is do not solely interact with just a few colleagues, right? Branch out, intentionally get to know other people in the office. We talked about that a second ago with the whole, team thing. of getting to know teams that are around you that you might not work on. Make sure that you're taking advantage of meeting new people in the office and walking down hallways and running into people in break rooms. Get to know those people. Don't just walk past them and say hello. As you're heating up your lunch or something like that, hey, what's your name again? What team do you work on? How did you decide to work here, right? Use those basic listening sequence tactics to get to know somebody else, right? And not just having these 3 or 4 colleagues and contacts. It's making sure that you're having a long-term vision, that if you create more contacts intentionally in your office, it's going to help you either in the short term or long term, right? And that's probably the most important thing, actually, other people than just people on your team. So again, we go over this slide because I think it's extremely important for people to hear, to learn from. These are questions that people ask a lot of me, and so I threw all these up here, and hopefully they're helpful in this presentation for you. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen and watch this presentation. Hopefully it's been extremely helpful. I'm really excited to be working here at VCU and supporting you all as students. So again, my name is Brian Rose. There's my email there. With any questions about anything, please do feel free to email me. Please do visit Handshake to set an appointment with a business career coach today. And always remember that we can help. Remotely, you can engage with us over phone or email, or like I said, go on Handshake and schedule an appointment. We can facilitate those via phone or via Zoom. In person, we actually exist on Sneed Hall, first floor, Suite B1102. But in the remote time that we're in here, make sure you engage with us over email, and make sure that you go on Handshake and schedule an appointment if you'd like to. What do we do? Resume reviews, elevator pitches, cover letters, mock interviews, job and internship search, networking help, and a whole lot more. So you can schedule appointments with us Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We're here to help. I know we're getting close to 40 minutes here. The goal is about 35, so I'll stop talking here in a second. If you don't remember anything else from this presentation, remember this, is that we care about you a lot, right? We are here for your success. We chose this career path and we chose this career field because we care about you as students, and we want to support you to reach your goals, to set a career plan, to discover all what you want to do with your life, right? We are here to help you out. Don't hesitate to reach out, call us, email us, set up a time to meet with us, a career coach, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Again, Brian Rose, hopefully enjoy the time you spent with us today, and we'll talk soon.